So, all right. Last week we started this series on, and the theme is again under construction. We're building something. We're building a life built and founded in Christ, right? As well as our church and as well as our community and so forth. Last week we looked at what? You remember the theme? 3 little piggies. Remember that? And we looked at the 3 little pigs, and one of them built with the cheap stuff, the straw, and then another one said, well, I'll upgrade it a little bit. We'll do some sticks, and that didn't work either. And finally, we built with bricks, and the idea behind it was that what you build with makes a difference. And that's all through life. Whether it's your personal life, your faith life, your church life, your family life, your business work life, whatever it is that you're building, it makes a difference how you build it and with what materials. Well, let me put something up here on the screen for you. And this is a love letter that Jesus kind of dictated to us. I have loved you just as my Father loved me. I could stop there and we could talk for weeks. So remain faithful to my love for you. If you obey me, I will keep loving you, just as my Father keeps loving me, because I have obeyed him. Now granted, this is not the great suggestion. All right? I have told you this to make you as completely happy as I am. Now I tell you to love each other as I have loved you. And the greatest way to show your love for friends is to die for them. And you are my friends if you obey me. And then he kind of switches gears a little bit. Servants don't know what their master is doing, so I don't speak to you as my servants. I speak to you as my friends, and have told you everything that my Father has told me. You did not choose me. He's switching gears again. You did not choose me. I chose you and sent you out to produce fruit, the kind of fruit that will last. And then my Father will give you whatever you ask for in my name. So I command you to love one another, or love each other. Very important words that Jesus gives to us today in regards to our relationship with him and with God the Father and with each other in this foundational aspect of what we are building on, which is love. About 30 years ago, there was a man that wrote a book, and the book was titled, Please Love Me. Anybody ever read this book? Titled, Please Love Me. And in this story, the author's name is Keith Miller, a very prominent Christian author. And in the story, he's writing about this woman that he met at a party and her lifelong struggle with betrayal, with heartbreak, and just trying to have a deep and a meaningful, loving relationship with somebody. Well, what the reader doesn't know is that in the story, there's also another individual who's struggling with the same things that's not really identified. This person also is looking for love, something that he can count on, something they can rely on, but as it happens sometimes, in all the wrong places, under all the wrong circumstances. This hidden person in the story is actually Keith Miller himself. He's struggling with these things in his own personal life. Well, this is a man who has spent his lifetime going around telling churches how to do it right. And he's doing it from his own personal experience. And in his book, he says, the hunger to love and to be loved is not really a respecter of persons or reputations or anything of that nature. He said the struggle and this desire to want to be loved and to love, it could be your pastor. It could be a prostitute on the street. It could be a movie star that you watch on TV, or a CEO, or a sports hero, or whoever. This is innate in this thing we call humanity, is that we want to be loved and we want to be able to love others. And for us, it's a foundational concept that we need to build our own individual lives on. Since Jesus understands this, he tells the disciples something, again, that's very important. As my Father has loved me, so have I loved you. And then he says, abide in my love. Abide in my love. Stay there with me. Stay in my love. Rest in my love. Be a part of my love. Anybody that's building something, whether you're a plumber or a carpenter or whatever the case, a plumber will understand the materials that he's working with. It used to be copper, what do they use now? PEX or whatever. Yeah, everything. A roofer understands the roofing materials and what tar strips are all about and all those types of things and how they have to be organized and arranged and how many nails to put in and where to put them and all those types of things. Electrician understands potential and electrical flow and complex circuitry. All these types of things. You have to understand the materials that you're building with. That's why it's so important to understand the concept of love and how to experience love and how to also give love. That's what I'm talking about. That's foundational to what we're doing here. Love is an experience before it can be an expression. Let me say that again. You have to be able to experience love before you can truly give love to someone else. And in a fallen and broken world, it's not always easy, is it? To experience love. You have to know it. You have to live it. You have to experience it. I often wonder, why would God create me or create us as babies that have to, all of a sudden, boop, here we are in the world and we got to figure things out and learn and make mistakes and all. Why didn't he just create us as grown adults that already know everything and then go backwards the other way? Why does he do it that way? You ever asked that question? Or am I the only one? I'm the only one, I guess. I think part of it is so that we can learn and experience love. I really do. I think that's part of the answer. So let me ask you the question. Are you living today as a loved child of God? Do you feel that? Do you know that in your soul of soul, your heart of hearts? Not just in words. Not just because, I've read this 1,000 times over the years in every Christian journal I've ever read or in the Bible, it tells me I'm loved, but do you know it in your heart? To experience love, certain things have to take place in order to experience love. Number one, it has to be chosen. Remember a few weeks ago we talked about love and the different types of love and all that. One of the aspects of it was, again, it has to be chosen. And we all want to be chosen. We all want to be special. We want to be picked. We want to be selected and wanted and desired and adopted and claimed and singled out and set aside. We all want that in our human nature. That's part of the love that we crave. The need to be chosen causes pastors to run to be bishops, teenagers to try out for sports sometimes, politicians sometimes to be elected, employees to work so hard for promotions. It's a good feeling to be chosen, and it's a raw feeling to be overlooked, to be passed by, to be done, to be ignored or neglected or rejected. In John 3:16, Jesus said some very, very important words. You did not choose me, but I chose you. How many times have I read that and it just goes, He chose me. He didn't owe me anything. I didn't buy my way into it. I don't deserve it, that's for sure. He chose me. How many times in the midst of our struggles and anxieties and depressions and all of these things do we forget the fact that we were chosen by the one that set it all in motion? Our Methodist founder, John Wesley, he made a statement one day. He said, there is no such thing as divine election. That's something that theologians and different denominations have argued about for centuries. Divine election. God chose certain people and didn't. No, he didn't. That's not biblical. I didn't choose somebody over somebody else. It's just not there. It's just not there. We might manipulate things and think it's there sometimes, but it's not. All are elected. All have been chosen. All are wanted. Every single one of us. So if you're feeling today here, sitting in the sanctuary, that sometimes you don't feel special to God, you don't feel chosen by God, you don't feel selected by God, you feel ignored by God, or whatever, you feel like God's maybe not interested in you. You know what? You're dead wrong. Dead wrong. Every single one of us has been chosen. I don't care if you're the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent, it doesn't make any difference. Every single person that's got a heartbeat in this world has been chosen by God. Another way you have to understand and experience love in order to use it as the foundation that we're building on is to understand that love not only is chosen, but love is also a way of knowing friendship, being chosen out as a friend, kind of like this would emphasize. I think that would be the message that Jesus would send to all of us today, is you get a friend in me. You know, there's another famous song, I won't play it for you, and that is What a Friend We Have in Jesus. You know that one, I'm sure. All our sins and all of our griefs to bear, it says. You see, Jesus is not just a friend of saints. He's a friend of sinners too. Fallen, broken people. People that are indifferent. People that don't trust him. People that hate him. You see, it's one of the misrepresentations that the world has made in regards to a relationship with God, is that there are selected people and that there are unselected people. That there are some people he wants to be friends with and there are some people he doesn't. But that's not the way he approaches humanity. He looks at us all as friends. He's a friend of the good, the bad. He was a friend of Judas. Remember Judas? The one that betrayed him. All those months, all those few years that they were together, knowing full well what was going to take place, Jesus was a friend to Judas. I don't know if I could ever have done that. To Peter, the one that was going to deny him, the one that was going to deny him 3 times and all that. Jesus was a friend to him. And to all the other disciples that Jesus had, and it wasn't just 12, there was lots of disciples that followed Jesus. He was a friend to them. And Jesus said, I do not call you servants any longer, as the servant does not know what his master is doing. I have called you friends. You know, a friend is a friend to you is that one unique person that asks how you are and then stays around to find out. Or is the person that says, you know, I know a lot about you and I'm still here. I know who you are, but I'm still your friend. Famous theologian by the name of St. Augustine once said, he said, a friend is someone who knows everything about you and loves you anyway. I'm right there with him. In researching a little bit, I like to look at statistics, and I was looking at some statistics that the Pew organization that does a lot of religiosity studies around the world. And recently, a couple of years ago, they said that, you know, while the numbers are decreasing at the time, it was about 70% of people in the United States say that they believe in a God of some sort. Okay? But the unfortunate part was that in their study, they also found that of those 70% that say there is a God of some sort, only 23% believe that God wants to be their friend. And they believe that something's there, but it's impersonal. It's a God that doesn't care. It's a God that doesn't really get involved. It's a God that's out on the distance. You all know I used to do prison ministry, and true story. Years ago, I received a letter from an inmate, and he told me his story about how he had grown up in an abusive household, and you know, it's just struggled. And anyway, at the age of 18, he broke away from the family and he left. And he said, there was a time in my life when it was very, very dark. And he said, I asked God to show me one person that would want to be my friend. In his letter, I'll never forget it. He said, I dreamt about Jesus that night. Really? God does love us, friends. He does look at each and every one of us as a friend. Well, not only do we need to experience love in order to give love and understand love and to use love as a foundation that we need to build on, but we need to remember that love is also the cement that kind of holds everything together. It's the thing that makes sense of it all, or doesn't make sense of it all. Why we do certain things, why we do things that don't benefit us sometimes, or, we give freely without expecting a return, and all these types of things that we're supposed to do as Christians and as people that love God. It doesn't always make sense, but love is a cement that holds it all together. So Jesus says, this is my commandment, love each other. When God commands us to love one another, He gives you the power to do it. God never tells you and insists that you do something that He doesn't provide the means to do it. I've come to learn that the hard way. Problem is, I don't always want to do it. I don't always understand it the way I should. To love somebody is to treat them fairly. And yeah, we always can go back to the golden rule, which is, do unto others as you want them to do unto you. But the world is different today. It's changed quite a bit over the years, especially since 9/11. I think in many ways we've gone from a world of justice to a world seeking revenge. So let me ask you another question. Are fear and revenge changing and challenging our national Christian values? Back in World War II, there was a General Omar Bradley. Many of you probably will remember his name. Back then, General Bradley said this. He said, the world has achieved brilliance without wisdom and power without conscience. Wow, what a statement. Talking about the way we've changed in our understanding of how we love one another, or we do good to those that, we treat people the way you want to be treated. So what would happen if right here and now, if we really started doing to others the way we want to be treated? Would it make a difference? You remember the concept of forgiveness? Remember that one? Probably one of the most difficult steps anybody in the Christian journey will ever take, especially as we go to understand and experience love. Part of love is forgiveness, friends. I know people, I know there's some here in this church that have a hard time forgiving someone in your past. or in your family or in your circle of friends and loved ones. You can't love like Jesus loved without forgiveness, friends. You can't do it. Forgive us our trespasses. We've said that twice today. Why do you think we did that? To remind ourselves. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Do you really believe that? Is it become ingrained in who you are? You see, forgiveness, it really is an empowered form of loving the other individual. It doesn't change the past. It doesn't remove an offense. It simply opens a door to a better future. That's all. And it releases that person the consequences of their actions to God. Let God take care of it. We might want to take care of it. But is that really forgiveness? You know what forgiveness is? Forgiveness is when you set a prisoner free, only to realize the prisoner is you. It's me. When you truly forgive somebody, it doesn't excuse what happened. It doesn't change the circumstances. But it takes yourself out of the cell. Another true story for you. Man, about 15 or 20 years ago, I remember talking with, he lost his promised retirement. A very tragic story. He worked for a company, one thing happened after another, and next thing you know, he's out on the street. He has no retirement, nothing. He knows who did it. It was the new president, vice president of personnel, I think it was. And unfortunately, everybody John ran into knew this story. From his family members, to the people at the post office, to the cashiers that he encountered, to the people at the gas station, to his next door neighbors. They see his rage and his disappointment and his unforgiveness became who he was. That's not love. That's not building on a foundation of love, friends. That's bitterness. Uncontrolled bitterness. Do you want to live a life of hate or love? And I'm asking each one of you. Do you want to live a life of hate or a life of love? If you want to live a life of love, then you need to learn to forgive. Period. And you already know that. I'm not telling you anything today that you don't already know. I'm just putting it in your face. If you want to live a life of love, like Jesus, you want to live after his example, then you need to do what he says. He says, if you love me, you'll obey me. And what does he say? He says, forgive your brothers and sisters. Relinquish it to me. And that is so hard to do. It seems easy on the outside, really. And then there's this aspect of compassion. Having compassion for another person. Another aspect of this foundational thing called love. Yeah, it's easy to have compassion on somebody when you turn on CNN and you see people running out of a burning building or holding onto a tree in the midst of a tsunami or standing on a roof after a flood or something. Sure, that's easy to have compassion for somebody like that. But the true meaning of the word compassion it comes from two different root words. Come, which means to be with, and passion, which means suffering. True compassion is to be willing to suffer alongside of the person who's suffering. Not just to feel bad for them, to be willing to step into where they are in their life and to endure with them. Anybody here ever read books by Henry Nouwen? I know you have. I have too. Henry Nouwen is quite a theological thinker, sociologist and psychologist, all this kind of stuff. And Henry Nouwen, in one of his books, came back to me a little bit, and It said, compassion requires us to be weak with the weak, vulnerable with the vulnerable, powerless with the powerless. You see, compassion is not our most natural response. We all want to make it in life. We want to be number one. We want to get ahead. We want to be different. We want to be first. We want to forge ahead and carve out our identities in the world. We don't aspire to suffer with people. Are you kidding me? We don't yearn to go into somebody else's anxiety with them. But man, that's what compassion is. Remember when Jesus wept over Jerusalem? He was compassionate for the people that were struggling. He was willing to enter into the difficulties of what they were dealing with in their own life, in their spiritual lives, in their understanding of their relationship with God. He was willing to enter into all of that.